Guys, the BRICS bloc is preparing to expand. Now, the question isn't whether it will happen, but rather when it will happen. Lately, there's been a lot of discussion in the media about BRICS falling apart, with a focus on Brazil and India's concerns about China's dominance. The headlines seem intended on creating divisions among BRICS members. However, the upcoming South Africa summit has officially declared that BRICS is moving ahead with expansion in 2023. BRICS has been a big force for change in how countries work together around the world. They're about to make some important announcements during their upcoming meeting. If they add more countries to their group, it could shake things up and make Western countries, especially the United States, worried. The leaders of BRICS coming together show that they're united and want to work together. This is a big deal because it might mean they're stronger than people thought, and this could lead to a major shift in how the world works, with BRICS becoming a powerful group that could challenge the G7 and even the US dollar. But why does BRICS want to grow, and what will it gain from it? The fact is that BRICS already had a bigger economy than the G7 since 2020, and their economies are doing well, compared to some Western countries. Imagine if BRICS gets even bigger, with 7 or 10 countries in the group. That would make their combined economic strength really strong. BRICS wants to have both lots of things to sell and lots of people to hire, so they're not dependent on just a few. Right now, most of the world's consumers are in the West, like the US and Europe, but BRICS wants to change that by having the biggest consumer class from their own group, like China and India. This would make them less reliant on Western countries for trade and could make a big difference in their future. By 2030, most of the biggest consumers will come from developing countries in the world market. Countries like Japan, Germany, and France from the G7 will have fewer consumers. But countries like Indonesia and the Philippines will have the most consumers over the next 10 years. If BRICS adds more countries, like Indonesia, it can spread out the demand for goods away from Western countries. This means the BRICS countries can trade more with each other and won't be as affected if the West tries to impose sanctions on them. Now, if you only trade with the West, you have to use their money, which could be a problem if they suddenly stop allowing you to use it, just like what happened with Russia's reserves. So who might be joining BRICS soon? Well, according to Brazil's President Lula, it could be Saudi Arabia, Argentina, and the UAE. These countries could lead the expansion of BRICS. Lula thinks these countries have a lot to offer in terms of economic power, and they would also benefit a lot by being part of BRICS. Now let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest oil producers in the world, making 12% of the total oil supply. They are also the leaders of a group of countries that control more than half of the world's oil. But this reliance on oil is risky. If they can't find people to buy their oil, it could cause serious problems because 74% of what they sell is related to oil, worth over $210 billion. In 2021, the largest purchaser of Saudi oil was China. However, if you combine the oil consumption of Japan, South Korea, and the United States, they surpass both Beijing and India. This poses a concerning situation for Mohammed bin Salman. Moreover, when we factor in the growing emphasis on green energy from Western countries, Saudi Arabia recognizes that its days of providing oil to the G7 nations are numbered, considering the push by the West for green energy. This realization is driving their interest in joining BRICS. Saudi Arabia is worried about the possibility of having limits placed on the prices of their energy exports, a tactic similar to what has been employed against Russia. To prevent this economic strain, Prince Abdul Aziz, the Saudi minister, issued a warning in March, stating that the kingdom won't sell oil to countries that impose price restrictions. By becoming part of BRICS, a bloc with a rapidly growing GDP, Saudi Arabia's fears could be alleviated. The Energy Information Administration, EIA, reports that among the top 10 oil consumers globally, BRICS nations, particularly India and China, dominate. Notably, BRICS accounts for 30% of global oil consumption, illustrating significant demand influence. As BRICS expands, its self-reliance increases, offering protection against potential Western sanctions. Even if subjected to sanctions, Saudi Arabia could continue oil sales within BRICS, ensuring a continuous flow of revenue. What does BRICS gain from this? The primary advantage is energy security. Saudi Aramco, for instance, has committed to supplying China with energy for the next 5 decades and beyond. Like China, Saudi Arabia could enhance its oil investments within BRICS countries, diversifying its supply network across the global south. Additionally, A notable objective is reducing reliance on the US dollar, following the example of countries like Russia. During the January Double Summit, the Saudi finance minister indicated a willingness to explore selling oil in other currencies, such as the yuan, rupees, or even the Saudi riyal. This move aims to decrease dependence on and potential vulnerabilities stemming from the West. Now, the UAE remains among the top 10 global art producers, positioned slightly higher than Iran and Brazil. Despite being more diversified than Saudi Arabia, a significant portion of the UAE's exports, well over 40%, still rely on oil products. This makes them vulnerable to potential oil sanctions or price restrictions, endangering their revenue. Therefore, the UAE is motivated to join a group that secures its oil demand for the long term. Additionally, with the Western world increasingly adopting green and renewable energy sources, the UAE's future outlook seems less promising. Nevertheless, the UAE has evolved beyond just being an oil producer. Thanks to the visionary planning of its leaders, it has established Dubai as a global hub, both architecturally and financially. Joining a powerful financial network, such as the BRICS bloc, is comparable in significance to controlling global commodities. In light of Western sanctions, the UAE is pivotal in facilitating trading relationships, such as Russian gold imports, which had shifted from London to Abu Dhabi. This bolsters the financial network of the BRICS bloc, enhancing self-sufficiency and reducing reliance on the Western financial system. The West's fear lies in losing influence if countries move away from using the Western financial system, undermining the effectiveness of sanctions. The example of India and the UAE illustrates a trend toward promoting local currencies for cross-border transactions, bypassing the US dollar. This move supports the possibility of bilateral trade within the BRICS bloc using member countries' respective currencies. We also have Argentina, which is currently grappling with a severe inflation crisis and economic challenges. Argentina could bring valuable assets to the BRICS bloc. You see, as the third largest economy in Latin America, Argentina's extensive agricultural exports, primarily soybeans, corn, and wheat, could bolster the BRICS bloc's food security. Furthermore, Argentina's inclusion in the bloc could provide opportunities to diversify its economy beyond agriculture. The expansion of the BRICS bloc signifies the emergence of a new global order, where emerging economies unite and collaborate. More than 40 countries are seeking membership, and the bloc's expansion would reinforce its resources, commodities, and establish an alternative financial system. Reflecting on the past expansion of the BRICS bloc to include South Africa, it's evident that the bloc's primary objective has always been developing partnerships rather than exclusivity. This expansion serves to expedite global trade and counter the impacts of protectionism and global destabilization. Countries are being drawn to join the BRICS bloc to mitigate the adverse effects of sanctions, access a larger combined economy, and reduce dependence on the West. Also, there is speculation that the BRICS bloc might still expand further in the coming years. This expansion aligns with the diverse and inclusive nature of the bloc, offering countries the chance to enhance their economic prospects. Alright guys, that wraps up our video for today. So what you about BRICS expansion, and which countries do you think will be joining soon? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more.